What's going on? Boys, order development. Little bit about that revelation I mentioned, some housekeeping stuff, and so on. Brief update about what happened earlier. Some sources I knew I was cool with, but I didn't realize we were cool like that. Found out what happened and went around shaking some trees. Apparently, what happened was someone's kids pranked me. And the way what happened, apparently, that was presented to me, sounds plausible, but I don't 100% buy it. It wasn't supposed to be targeted. If that's the case, then why was it left in my area specifically? The note said, "Run, you're dead, we see you." That doesn't read like a prank to me. If I pranked somebody like that, I would be in prison. How did they get the keys? When did they come in? Why isn't anything being done about this if there's an idea of who did it? If this is what happened, and I think it might be, I have an idea. And it probably involves money. Why am I hearing this from outside sources? Maybe someone's kids did do it, but it wasn't untargeted, and their entry still isn't explained. I was assured something like this isn't going to happen again, and I can rest easy, and I appreciate that, but I'm going to take precautions like I can't. Let's multiply 12 by a number. But an interesting part of the update was a stress episode. I didn't feel sick this time, but I felt like I was being trash compacted. I don't know, or I haven't figured out yet, what power I unlocked from that, but it felt like another evolution. Now, on to the revelation. So I finished Morrowind the other night, and I was reading about Chim. I learned Vivek is even deeper than I thought he was, especially when you get into the semi-canon outside lore I didn't know existed, but makes a lot of sense. I found a chart that describes Chim in relation to the Godhead, but it also describes the different relationships one experiences between self and the Godhead as one climbs the rungs of enlightenment. Now, I've put the chart on the screen for you to have a look at, but I'll link it in the description if you'd like to look closer at it. And the accompanying text in that post is interesting. It's worth reading. This chart is a key because it's describing what I've been feeling, where I was, where I am, and where I might be going, where we might go. It's interesting because there are multiple paths, and specifically, looking at it from a Scrollsian view or a Vivekian view, these endpoints of apotheosis, the left-hand path, or dissolution, the right-hand path, are neither the end of the work. I think we are in the midst of gnosis. Self and God are recognizing one another and overlapping. And in our works, we deepen that overlap, are deepening that overlap every day. Part of my revelation came in two forms at once. On the one hand, realizing just how much you don't know. And I don't mean that in an ignorance sense, like looking out at the ocean from a beach. I mean feeling how much you don't know within the ocean. You're in it this time. And knowing you don't know anything and feeling you don't know anything are two completely different experiences. One is a polite acknowledgement and unconsciously a dismissal. Feeling it feels like being thrown around by waves. You can't dismiss it, unconsciously or consciously. You can't even be polite. Your awareness is being thrown around and waterlogged by the depths of all the things you don't know. The second part of that revelation is realizing now you are in the water. Previously, you would look at something like this chart and not understand it and go, wow, that's interesting, I don't understand it. And maybe think about it for a few minutes and then move on. Or maybe assume you've figured out what it is and then move on without really figuring out what it is and without knowing you haven't really figured out what it is. Now you look at something like this and you feel you don't know it. You might be getting some things out of it, but you recognize there is so much more to get that you aren't getting. But now that you are in the water, you are in this shit, and you feel that you don't know. You now have the capacity to work with it and start figuring things out. Start to know. So with that, again, I think we are in the gnosis stage, which is still a very early stage. It's a stage of deepening the overlap between self and God. There is ecstasis, what the chart calls the mystical union, and the way I'm thinking about it, I'm viewing it right now as the third impact. Self and God have crashed together to the exclusion of anything else. Is that what it is? Maybe partially. One of the things I heard Terence McKenna say in a video, which I just love, is why have just one answer? So then we get into what happens after ecstasis. You have the right-hand path, the zero-sum path, and you've probably heard about this path, even if this name wasn't attached to it, many times before. It's ego death. It's dissolution of self. It's understanding / becoming in realizing you are a drop in the ocean, becoming no longer the drop, but the ocean itself. Morrowind is so on a level people do realize, it seems like a lot of people realize actually. I don't know why I don't see Morrowind in occult type circles as much. It has everything. The Dwemer you could interpret as achieving the right-hand path, the zero-sum path. Hitting the Godhead, realizing that they are everything and everything is them, and then piecing out from existence. Total ego death. Total ego death. Right now. But then you have the left-hand path. Supposedly also a mystical or occult path of enlightenment. And I have seen this one before, but I don't see it anywhere near as often. And I have to wonder why. So in the left-hand path, as I currently understand it, after ecstasis and the drop recognizes it is a drop in the ocean, rather than becoming the ocean, it remains both a drop and the ocean. It's not just a drop, it's not just the ocean. It is both simultaneously. Chim, Vivek, a living God. Vivek talks about this waking life and dreaming life. When Vivek is, quotes, waking, he is present on the mortal plane, in a physical body, doing mortal physical shit with dreaming or godlike powers. Sleeping god, dreaming god powers. He is everything. He is above, he is outside, but he is also acutely inside, as compared to other gods in the Elder Scrolls who are exclusively dreaming gods, outside gods, or maybe oceanic gods. So rather than the right hand's path, dissolution of ego into the everything, in the left hand path, you almost enhance your ego, or now live in the mortal world with a divine ego. You are at once the drop and the ocean. And I guarantee you I'm missing things here, but that's what sitting with ideas is for. You don't have to understand something fully. You don't have to have just one conclusion, which is probably an incorrect conclusion, because you are an incomplete being at the moment. Versus some kind of actualization, he was complete at each moment. And I want to talk about what I mean by sitting with ideas. I think everyone is going to have a different form of this, but someone mentioned the way I talk about sitting with ideas sounds like NI. And NI types certainly can sit with ideas, but the way I sit with ideas isn't much like NI. NI, at least from the outside, looks like the NI type sticks something in the oven and then goes about doing every other thing, almost forgetting that idea exists, until the buzzer goes off and they come and check on it and it's ready. It has baked into a delicious idea cake. The way I sit with ideas is more like taking a concept that I know I need to chew on and stringing it up, like I'm going to dry or salt meat. And then I take a leaf blower loaded with whatever shit the world feels like giving me and shooting it at the idea, plus letting the wind hit it. And in this weathering process, an active and inactive weathering process, but always with the idea in mind, watching some parts chip and fly away, and other things being blasted at it, sticking to it, until, bam, it has become the puzzle piece I was looking for. It's a very active process, like tumble drying it with sand even. But anyway, I think we are on the left-hand path. There is something important about ego, especially in relation to the divine. You can't, you can commit ego death, let it dissolve, but you shouldn't if you're built like we are. But you also can't just let your ego sit. You have to work it. As the chart said, rather than the self dissolving into the ocean, God, the entirety, is devoured by the one, by the ego, and by which a new God is born. The ocean doesn't swallow the drop swallows the ocean and creates a new ocean. And Vivek, in these extra canon sources I haven't gone through yet, I'd like to do a Morrowind playthrough that is tribunal aligned. Role-playing it, getting really into it, reading all of Vivek's lessons and chewing on them for an entire playthrough. God, this Nerevarine I played was nothing but fire and blood. Anyway, Vivek in these extra canon sources, despite having achieved Chim, despite having achieved apotheosis of the left-hand path and becoming a living god, he hits a moment I hit. What I thought was the culmination was actually just the beginning of something that much more incomprehensible. Vivek, a living god, runs into that on a much higher level. And that is why I finally, kind of, a little bit, felt good about myself and my life. We are bona fide pilgrims on the path, and we jumped into the water relatively early. And based on what's been going on lately, spiritually, I think we are getting closer to ecstasis. And I think the stress attacks, the metamorphoses, are preparations for ecstasis. So when we hit ecstasis, we don't go zero sum, we go chim, priming the drop to swallow the ocean, so we don't pull a Shinji. Or in other words, in one universe, going zero sum, and in another verse, being so pathetic, undergoing ecstasis, and then ending up right back at the beginning. That is a big yikes. And I haven't watched Rebuild, and I don't intend to. Ray is so... That's another thing you want to talk about perspective. Why do people like Ray so much? She's nothing. I don't get it. However, I do notice patterns between or among the people who choose Rei, choose Asuka, or choose Masato. I haven't watched Evangelion in coming up on 6 years now, and it's crazy that the memory of Evangelion is still this potent a holy text. And I'm not going to explain the pronunciation thing again, even though I probably have to. Anyway, to sum all this chart stuff up, because I'm still working through it, when you feel confused and wrought, you are on the right path, I think. And while we're here, I have a brief idea for another gospel. We're going to call this character Toddy of the Mysteries, or Mysterious Toddy. A complete being is brought into existence in a void, and he is surrounded by other beings. Or maybe it's just one being. It might be one and many at the same time. This being or beings says or say the following: "We cannot supply you answers, but take heart. We have bequeathed you a mystery. From this mystery will come answers and mysteries yet more." And then it or they pull a Dwemer and disappear. All Toddy has to think about in this endless void is, why do I exist? But with the utter absence of substance aside from himself, he has nothing to answer his questions. It is just him and nothing. Existence and non-existence. So in the absence of exception, I might not be wording that right, but the absence of other, rather. Or perhaps there is other, but that other is total absence. It is his antithesis as much as he is its. And from that, he can't accomplish much. So, because he can't figure out why he is, he undergoes mitosis, so he can get a good look at himself and have something to compare himself against. And in a potential final version, a lesson of Vivek maybe. What follows would be much more detailed and flowery, but essentially what happens is Toddy uses his fundamental mystery to create smaller mysteries which he can answer with distinction, or distinguishment rather, and with each mystery and answer there comes more distinguishment, more distinction, more separation, more things for other things to compare themselves against. The deepening or the blossoming of ego, which in this cosmology is the ever more blossoming of mystery and answer, all founded on the ultimate mystery. Why do we exist? That was brought to my attention recently, and I hadn't really felt that before. Why are we? The biggest mystery is why there is something instead of nothing. And when you sit on that foundational mystery for a while, the one that I don't think we, at least right now, have the capacity to answer, you get freaked out a little bit. The biggest question is staring you in your face every second of every day. So again, in these Gospels or in this cosmology, Toddy would be the first child of the monad, and the father of the demiurges and archons, and so on. As above, so below. And while Toddy is the curious creator of material existence, he's not the ultimate creator. He is the fashioner of existence as we know it. The monad, which again is not a thing or an individual or an agency, it's hard to explain. It's more the culmination of everything we don't know and can't know, is still the ultimate creator, but that isn't really what you would call it, because it's the ultimate question. And there were other organizational order development things I was thinking about, but those are all centered around what would SOA look like if it took on a more materially ordered form, rather than just a set of ideas. Money, leadership, etc. But I think we'll save those for another time, if ever. But yeah, I think that covers it for the day. We are feeling it, and maybe reaping actual benefits now. Weird shit. That's another thing I need to think about. And I will update you if any neat mystic shit happens. But that about rippity wraps this one up. I hope you enjoyed watching, because I certainly enjoyed making it. You thought this shit earlier was going to stop me from sharing this revelation with the boys. No way. Absolutely not. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. And comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. Do you feel what you don't know? It's a different sensation. But thanks again for watching, everybody. Really, we have a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun, in fact, you can fail to knock it over. It's a more resilient sort of fun, both physically and spiritually. But that's how much fun we have on this channel, and I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.